Good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us. My name's Paul Saxton from eBECS, and I'm going to be walking through this webinar today with you with my friend and colleague, Simon Spring from WhereScape.
Good morning, everyone.
Thanks, Simon. We're going to be taking you through on-prem to the Azure cloud webinar today and taking a look at automation and how that can impact you. What we've got on the right hand side, hopefully everybody can see that you can ask questions in the questions box. Please feel free to do that as we go through. We've got a Q&A session section at the end of the webinar, and we'll go through all the questions that have been stacked up at that point. So without further ado, Simon, would you like to go to the next screen for me, please? So today's agenda, we're going to walk through a very brief introduction. We're going to take just a few minutes to look at the changing data landscape. And for those data professionals out there, I'm sure you'll be more than aware of the changing data landscape that we face within our day-to-day business. We'll take a look at WhereScape partnership that eBECS has, and why we found it so important to partner with WhereScape. Simon will then take us through the capability of the WhereScape toolset, and then we'll take a look at that Q&A section, followed by some next steps. So for those of you that aren't aware who are eBECS, well, we're a Microsoft practice. We're actually now part of DXC technology, and as part of that acquisition, we become DXC's Microsoft wing. That means we cover all of the Microsoft offerings, including, of course, what we're talking about today, which is analytics, data, AI, and Azure, but also we're the #1 partner in the UK for Microsoft Dynamics. That's Finance and Ops, NAV, and ERP. So we have a really broad capability that allows us to focus on end-to-end business solutions for our customers, taking them into whatever technology is required to solve their immediate business needs. Next slide, please, Simon. Of course, we carry a whole bunch of badges, as lots of Microsoft partners do, but we're very proud of these badges because not only are they based on our ability to sell Microsoft's products, but also in the customer satisfaction that we achieve. So these things are really important to us to show you, our customers and prospects, what a great job we do and recognize the hard work that we put in. I wanted to give you just a very brief spread of some of the customers that we're actively working with. And I'm going to call out two which are particularly interesting in the setting that we have today. So first of all, I'm going to call out, let's go with, sorry, my screen's just gone funny, everybody. I've lost everything. Let's go with Nando's first. So Nando's is a brand I think most people will be aware of. Certainly, if you haven't tasted their products, their marketing and their icons are really very obvious and something that I think has found its way into most homes. Nando's came to us with a very simple problem, that they had a huge amount of data coming from lots of EPOS systems that was almost impossible for them to access in the format that it had. It's a really interesting organization. Each region is operated quite independently of another, and that's a very conscious decision to give each region the flexibility that it needs to be able to operate in a way that best suits that market. But of course, that leads to a situation where we have lots of siloed data and information. Imagine the challenge of bringing those things together for such a large global organization and in what was a very challenging and short deadline. what happened was we utilized the WhereScape technologies, which Simon's going to take you through shortly, to accelerate that program. And we were able to bring in an entire region, and that was North America, so quite a large region, into a data vault based architecture, which again Simon's going to touch on later, within a matter of weeks. I think the end-to-end data warehousing project took somewhere in the region of 6 to 8 weeks. So you can see the kind of acceleration that we're experiencing through the utilization of automation technologies. Of course, it's not always just simply about creating data warehouse and data platforms. If we take a separate customer, a customer called Berkeley, who actually build homes and quite high caliber homes and estates. They had a slightly separate challenge. In this case, they were moving to a new Dynamics platform. In this case, it was Dynamics CE. They wanted a new CRM platform to manage their customer interactions. Now, what happened was they needed to take over 15 separate systems that they currently had and put them into a single new unified CRM system. Now, for anybody that's attempted this, I'm sure that you'll understand this is quite a large undertaking, particularly when the quality and accuracy of the data that was migrated was really important to Berkeley. So what they did was come to eBECS for help, obviously for the implementation, but also the data management. What we did was recommend, again, a data vault-based data warehousing solution using WhereScape to pull those 15 data sources together and store them into a warehouse, because we knew that we wouldn't be migrating all of the data. This is just data that was going to be migrated into CRM for their future transactions. They needed somewhere to keep that legacy data and also to start to store other pieces of information that weren't in the CRM system. Once that data was stored in that data warehouse, in that data vault-based data warehouse, we applied a whole bunch of data cleansing and master data routines to make sure that at the point of transferring the data into their dynamic system, they had a cleansed, conformed, high quality data set, which was going to run their CRM system going forwards. And again, we achieved an improvement in quality through the use of WhereScape, but also a huge reduction in the amount of time and effort that was required to source that information, store it, and cleanse it. And we're looking at somewhere in the region of a 50% saving in the amount of effort that was required to undertake that task. So thanks, Simon. Next slide, please. So the changing data landscape. For most people on this call, sorry, next slide, please, Simon. For most people on this call, I'm sure you have a data background. Just wanted to put up an interesting quote, actually from me, which at least I found mildly amusing. But I think I've seen more disruptive changes to the data landscape in the last 2 years than I have in my entire career. Now, I've been a Microsoft BI consultant for the past 15 years. I go back as far as, the original SQL Server. I remember things like reporting services coming on a separate disk. And it's just amazing to me to see the changes in the data landscape that I'm sure everybody is facing. What is interesting is the fact that I think we all know that Microsoft sits right out there in the top right-hand side as a leader in this space, whether that be in the database management system itself, but also in the BI and analytical platform. The days when that SQL Server was shipped as a boxed product, which we used to install on a server, when our architecture used to include things like a SQL Server database to ingest multiple sources of data, followed by an analytical platform on top to improve performance, followed by some reporting capability on top is just no longer the case. We don't simply have information from transactional line of business systems that sit on premise. We have information coming from cloud-based solutions. We have structured and semi-structured and unstructured data potentially coming from IoT devices. We need to take care of images. We have to take care of documents. We have to think about information that's generated outside of the business in things like social media scenarios. And all of those things need to be accommodated within our modern data platform. Next slide, please, Simon. What I would say, and we're going to take a look at some reference architectures from Microsoft on the modern data architecture, but what I would say is that business intelligence and data management, descriptive analytics, whatever we want to call it, still is based on the three main pillars, which are tools, techniques, and technologies. Now, from a technologies perspective, Microsoft have been incredibly busy. We have data lake-based data platforms. We have semi-structured storage. We have blob storage. We have different versions of SQL databases. We have a whole bunch of technology which is ever evolving and changing. Some of those technologies used to be the remit of large banks and investment houses. Now we simply need to log into Azure, enter our credit card details, and we have thousands of nodes of processing power as part of a big data solution for our small manufacturing organization. So that's changed significantly. Techniques are also changing. So I've mentioned Data Vault twice so far in this webinar, and you're going to hear Simon talk about it again later. It's incredible to think that that simple architecture that we had with SQL Server, where we store the data in a SQL database, apply an analytic layer and put some reports on top, and the way that we've done that is appropriate to today's technologies. It simply is not. And the tools that we have are what we're focusing on today. You know, it's really important that those tools keep up with the techniques and technologies that are available to us to enable us to take advantage of those new technologies. And that's really what we're here to talk about today. So next slide, please, Simon, and then I'm nearly done. So really, again, just to reiterate, what are we trying to do in a data space? We're simply trying to capture, analyze, report, and discover. That discovery phase happens all the way through the build process of our capturing mechanisms, all the way through analyzing and through reporting. And that's a really important point. Next slide, please, Simon. Some of you that are familiar with Microsoft's data architectures may have seen this modern data warehouse slide. What I wanted to do is just provide you with a very high level insight into where WhereScape fits. Now, apologies, Simon's going to talk about WhereScape Red and 3D. I'm afraid my icons are mainly simplified here, but hopefully you'll get a bit more insight in the detailed drill down session on how these things fit together. Next slide, please, Simon. So why the WhereScape partnership in the first place? What happened? And there's quite a long story to this. If you want to flip to the next slide, Simon, while I'm talking. So within eBECS, we pride ourselves on keeping up to date with all of those new tools, techniques, and technologies, and ensuring that we're offering customers the best value. It was very obvious to us that the landscape was changing very rapidly and that we needed something that could ensure that we were delivering value to our end customers very quickly, and that we were able to accommodate those changes in technologies along the path of an implementation. We had some very specific requirements around the utilization of Data Vault as a technique for data warehousing implementation. That's a really important point for everyone to remember, that Data Vault is not just a modeling approach, it's also a technique for implementing data warehousing solutions. So we had those two key things. We wanted to ensure that we were cloud ready, and we wanted a tool that we could use for both building data warehousing architectures, but also for the migration of data. And with that very specific list of requirements, we went to the market to find the best partner we could to ensure that we could deliver on that promise. And that's where the WhereScape partnership was formed. And it's hopefully through the insights that you've had into just 2 of our combined customers, you've started to see how this technology has enabled us, this tool has enabled us to leverage the technologies to focus on business value and to reduce the overall effort required for implementing a data warehouse. And I think with that, Simon, it's over to you for the next round of slides. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you very much, Paul. So my name is Simon Spring. I'm an account director at WhereScape. I've been with WhereScape for a number of years, very much with a technical background. I've seen the landscape that Paul's been driving change also significantly in the last few years. And I'm going to talk you through WhereScape, who we are, our applications, and why people use WhereScape, specifically in the context of Azure Cloud. So WhereScape software automates the delivery of your data infrastructure. So that is data warehouses, it's data vaults, it's data lakes. We use automation technology to speed up the generation of these platforms, to speed up getting the right data into the right people's hands, i.e. making your end users happy that they've got what they need and it's the right thing. And if it's not the right thing, they can very quickly, they can ask for it to be changed, and they can then see that change applied very, very quickly. With speed comes a inherent reduced cost and reducing the risk of these deliveries of different flavors of data analytics platform by making sure that you can iterate quickly through the process of delivering capabilities to end users. You reduce the risk of it being the wrong solution. You reduce the risk of it having the wrong data in it, or at least discovering that the data is wrong late in the day. So through automation, we bring consistency to the produced system. We make it easier to extend, so it's not a case of quickly building something that then takes a long time to change. We're all about changing and enabling that change to happen easily with fewer people typically, and therefore allowing teams to take on larger workloads and deliver that to their end users quicker. The last aspect here is documentation, and I'm going to go into that into a bit more detail as we go along. So WhereScape software is automating the build of new warehouses. It's automating aspects of enhancing existing warehouses or data platforms. And I'm going to use data warehouse as a very generic term here to encompass all things from data vaults, data lakes, EDWs, data marts, and so on. And then the final aspect here is around migration. So that's data migrations from a number of different areas, be it application to application or marts and warehouses to other marts and warehouses. So we see customers across the board, across all industries, using WhereScape and automation to deliver their warehouse capabilities, whether or not it's Nike or VW or small fruit growers and higher education colleges. Vodafone, so a couple of examples here just to sort of give a bit of context on top of Paul's couple of examples. Vodafone are able to deliver just in a couple of days what would previously have taken them 6 months. And through that process, you can imagine how much more innovative they can be with the solutions they create. Because when you build something for 2 days and you decide that it's completely wrong, you can throw it away and you can start again with very little cost. Whereas if it takes you 6 months, you really need to make sure that it gets some use. Micron, another nice example here. I think this is Data Vault mention number 5. So Micron have the largest data vault, I believe, globally. I think they load something in the region of 8 billion rows a day. They're a chip manufacturer based in the US. And again, they're using WhereScape to deliver their new data vault capabilities, and they can deliver that in 1 hour using our model-driven approach. So I'm going to give you an overview of WhereScape automation. I'm then going to touch on how that applies to Azure and to migrations, and then we're going to flick back for some next steps and questions. So for WhereScape, we have this concept of the 5 Ds of automation, which is kind of cheating a little bit, as daily ops is more of an O. Starting with design, taking designs for data warehouses, whether or not that's in a dimensional model or a data vault or whatever it might be, taking those designs, linking them to your different source systems and generating out target designs. WhereScape looks after that process. So there's design automation there. There's development automation, so generating code to ingest data from your on-prem platforms into your target platform that in this case, let's talk about Azure, or maybe it's a mixture of different target platforms. We generate the native code that is native to the target environment. So it's Azure code, it's SQL Server code, it's Snowflake code, for example. There's then documentation. So what has been developed, what is running, you have metadata within WhereScape's metadata repository that describes the entire system, describes where all of your source data sits, what those source models look like, and it then describes the flow of data through from those sources into their target data models and any transformations that are applied. So you have that very nice safety blanket to say that if requested to tell you where data is coming from and what transformations are being applied to that, you can see it within the WhereScape documentation. And we generate a business glossary as well. So the last couple, deployment, WhereScape generates deployment packages to move what's been developed in a development system into your various different target systems for production. And then daily operations is the repeat loading of that data, whether or not that's on a daily, hourly, every minute, or in a real-time feed situation. So you architect, we automate, as the headline to the webinar goes. We take your architectures, so Azure architecture, as Paul showed us with Data Vault as an example there. We take that modeling style, we take that platform, and we take whatever your patterns are in terms of real-time loading, incremental loading, recording history or not recording history, using some sort of file-based data lake layer at some point in that reference architecture. We take all of that architecture and we automate as much of that process as possible. So with reference number 6 to Data Vault, you've got Dan Lindstedt, Data Vault 2 standards, which he validates the rules within the WhereScape software to make sure that we are generating the compliant Data Vault code. We've got 2 core applications here, WhereScape 3D and WhereScape Red. 3D used for the model driven development, the discovery and profiling of your source data, and then WhereScape Red looking after the physical build, so generating all of the ETL code, generating those scripts on Azure using the Azure API for moving data up in parallel, encrypted into the Azure environment, into blob storage, and so on, and then on into your different target databases. WhereScape Red and WhereScape 3D combined with our Migration Express package produce a offering for lifting data from existing platforms into your new target platforms. You might have an on-premise or cloud, or it doesn't really matter where it is, data vault, data mart, any kind of data infrastructure that needs moving from there into its new target. Migration Express will discover those source structures. It'll discover and profile the data contents and work out the most efficient way of moving that data into Azure, breaking it up into files that are optimized for parallel loading into Azure, and then populating the new Azure compliant target model. Conscious that we're running very short on time, so I'm going to flick through and just touch here on the processing flow. So Migration Express will generate the code to populate those new Azure models. It'll then schedule those in a parallel workflow and allow you to monitor exactly how often those records are moving across on an incremental or one-off basis. We support a number of different target technologies. So you might be running Azure with Oracle on it, and Snowflake, and SQL, Azure DW. We don't really care. WhereScape will generate, using the WhereScape metadata, we push it through templates that are producing the native code for that particular platform or combination of platforms. So a quick look at our architecture, whether or not you're moving on Oracle, Azure DW, Snowflake, and so on, we generate code from metadata that describes that flow, that understands your different models. We then push it down onto the target platform. This means you can then have a future-proof element that says in a couple of years, if you decide to standardize on one particular technology on Azure, then you can push that same metadata through that technology's templates and very quickly migrate the code flows. So last point here, Admiral Insurance, taking WhereScape automation to turn their testing iterations into 2-hour turnarounds instead of 2 weeks, and they're now able to push new prototypes into production in just a few weeks. So with 2 minutes to spare, let's flick back to Paul to talk through the next steps.
Thanks, Simon. So we just wanted to put a couple of offers out to people that are on the call. The main one here is warehouse in a day. And what we wanted to offer is a one-day session where, collectively eBECS and WhereScape will come to you, run what we call a test drive, which is effectively a hands-on with the WhereScape toolset with your business data on your premises with no cost to you. So if that's something anybody is interested in, please reach out to us. There'll be a follow-up from our marketing teams, I'm sure, but we'd be more than happy to show. I think we all know the proof is in the pudding. At eBECS as well, if you're interested in anything that we've talked about today, we do run business intelligence strategy review sessions. There's a number of different options which are on the screen right now that you can take up to help you understand where you are on your maturity curve and how you might take your BI initiatives to the next level. With that, Simon, I think a very quick Q&A session. I can see just one question so far.
So around licensing, so WhereScape's licensed per user, so that's per developer using our software, and it's licensed on a perpetual or a subscription basis, and that covers a bundle of WhereScape 3D and WhereScape Red. WhereScape Migration Express is not limited to users. It's purely a time-based subscription offering. So if you need any more information on that or pricing, then please do get in touch. And if you have any more questions, then please fire away. You should have our email details following the webinar.
That's perfect. And with that, I think we're pretty much dead on time. So if we don't have any more questions, thank you everybody for your time. Have a good day and hopefully speak soon. Thank you.
Thank you all.